Hello, Professor Michael. We would like to ask you some questions about your job. Could you explain us what you are in charge of?
I'm a professional pianist with a degree in jazz at the conservatory.
What's your favorite kind of music?
I love listening and making music in all its forms.
What type of jazz music do you like the best?
I like all types of jazz, even bebop on occasion, but my fave is Boogie Woogie.
What is the history of Boogie Woogie?
Boogie Woogie is a genre of blues music that became popular during the late 1920s. While standard blues traditionally expresses a variety of emotions, Boogie Woogie is mainly dance music. Despite originating from the blues, Boogie Woogie is characteristically very powerful, lively, and infectiously upbeat. It is most often associated with the piano, where the left hand reproduces syncopated and repetitive notes that drive the rolling rhythm, and the right hand carries the melody, which complement and syncopate the rhythms of the left hand. In the early days, when the very first Boogie Woogie piano players performed in small clubs, they had two main objectives: to entertain and to make the people dance. The pioneers of this piano blues style were a real, one-man band, providing the bass, the melody, and the solo all at the same time. The basic Boogie Woogie rhythm, an outgrowth of ragtime and rural blues, is said to have been inspired by the rhythmic clacking of steam locomotives. I think that it is one of the most complicated blues piano styles to learn. Boogie Woogie really got its break though in 1938. Producer John Hammond, a major proponent of integration and of recognizing the greatness of the top African-American jazz artists, while still in his late 20s, he presented two groundbreaking concerts at Carnegie Hall on December 23, 1938 and December 24, 1939, that were titled From Spirituals to Swing. Both of the concerts trace the evolution of black music from spirituals and blues up to Count Basie. The historic Carnegie Hall concert of the 1938 was an event that helped launch Boogie Woogie into the national spotlight. It brought the Boogie Woogie music into public prominence and introduced it to a much larger, white audience. 4 talented musicians took part in that event. Their names were Albert Ammons, Pete Johnson, Meade Lux Lewis, along with singer Big Joe Turner. They created a great sensation at the Spirituals to Swing concert in Carnegie Hall, establishing Boogie Woogie as a crowd-pleasing trend that made good money for most of the popular big bands in the nation. Big band orchestras began to incorporate the style into their own music, and with great success. Boogie Woogie remained popular throughout the 1940s, until towards the end of the decade, when the music began to evolve into rhythm and blues, and came to be reincarnated as rock and roll. Toward the end of the 40s and into the 50s, the Boogie Woogie feel became an essential element of early rock and roll. Rollin' Pete, recorded by Big Joe Turner with Pete Johnson on piano, is a straight-out Boogie Woogie song, and is recognized as possibly the first rock and roll record ever made.
Where did this kind of music originate, and who made the first Boogie Woogie recording?
The origins of this musical style can be traced back to the USA in the late 1800s, in particular to the southern state of Texas. It was a musical style popular amongst the African American communities, and associated with house parties and drinking establishments. Back then the style was known as Fast Western, or Fast Texas, or even Barrel House, as a reference to the venues or cheap saloons, in which it was played where the beer was served from barrels. In the early decades of this century, poor, southern, rural African American laborers entertained themselves in rough shacks known as barrel houses. Here, unschooled blues singers accompanied themselves on the piano. The music we now refer to as Boogie Woogie began to take shape when these musicians developed a faster, purely instrumental form of blues for dancing. In the decades between World Wars I and II, many African Americans migrated to the cities of the North, such as Chicago and Kansas City, to find better jobs and to escape the harsh racial prejudices of the South. Many barrel house pianists made the move as well. In these urban locations, they would perform at bars, rent parties, and houses of prostitution. These pianists were the first generation of Boogie Woogie players. They include Jimmy Blythe, Herschel Thomas, Cow Cow Davenport, Little Brother Montgomery, Cripple Clarence Lofton, Jimmy Yancey, and Pine Top Smith. There is much debate about the first recorded Boogie Woogie songs. The first known recording of a true Boogie Woogie piano solo is probably Jimmy Blythe's Chicago Stomps, recorded in 1924, while the first hit record in the style was Pine Top's Boogie Woogie, by Pine Top Smith, recorded in 1928. Smith's record was the first Boogie Woogie recording to be a commercial hit. It launched the musical genre into the public domain like never before, and helped establish Boogie Woogie as the name of the style. The second generation of Boogie Woogie pianists, which performed on stage at Carnegie Hall, carried the Boogie Woogie music to a new level of refinement. In 1927, Meade Lux Lewis first recorded Honky Tonk Train Blues, his most famous boogie woogie piece that cleverly depicts a train's engine, whistle, and wheels. In 1928, the year before his death, Pine Top Smith moved to Chicago, where for a time he lived in the same apartment building as Ammons and Lewis. The three would meet at Ammons' apartment, which was the only one that had a piano. During this time, Pine Top taught Pine Top's Boogie Woogie to Ammons. Ammons later recorded his own dynamic version of the piece under the name of Boogie Woogie Stomp. At the age of 17, Ammons met Meade Lux Lewis, while they were both drivers for Chicago's Silver Taxicab Company. The two men honed their skills by pounding the ivories on an upright at the depot and by gigging publicly after hours, sometimes doubling up for Boogie Woogie piano four hands. Albert Ammons started his own band at the Club de Lisa on the South Side in 1934, and remained at the club for the next 2 years. During that time he played with a powerful five-piece unit that included Guy Kelly, Dalbert Bright, Jimmy Hoskins, and Israel Crosby. Ammons became strongly identified with the Boogie Woogie style after recording Boogie Woogie Stomp and Swanee River Boogie for Decca, with his Rhythm Kings in 1936. The Rhythm Kings version of Swanee River Boogie was a success, and sold millions of copies. Despite this success, Ammons next decided to take himself to New York City, where he teamed up with another gifted pianist known as Pete Johnson. The two performed regularly at the Café Society, and were occasionally joined by Lewis. These three unbelievably talented pianists often played in combinations of 2 and even 3 pianos, creating a richly textured piano performance.